Hello Orchid friends, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time watching my video, my channel is all about orchids. From what orchids I have, how I grow them, my thoughts on certain orchid topics, to what orchids in my collection are blooming, etc. So if you want to follow along my orchid hobby adventure, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification. Today we're going to look at my Phalaenopsis bellina again. I have introduced this bellina to you recently when it was blooming for the very first time, and I think a couple weeks have gone by, and what you're seeing here is the picture of its second bloom. It's a summer blooming species, so no wonder, it's bellina time, bellina season. What I have done differently with this orchid after the first bloom is finished, I basically gave it more fertilizer, thinking that it may need additional nutrients, because I think blooming for an orchid it requires a lot of energy and a lot of fuel, so I thought I would increase the fertilizer dosage from quarter strength to about 1/3, and I only did that once, and then I gave it about a quarter cup of water every time I watered this orchid. Basically, how I care for this orchid was almost no different than regular time, but I made sure that it was put back to where it was on my growing rack, because my friend told me that the bellina, summer blooming, they grow really actively during summertime, but it's important to continue to provide the same type of environment, sunlight and humidity and temperature, so that it's easier for the spike to elongate and bloom for you. And sure enough, after a few weeks, I see that tiny bud begin to develop even bigger and faster, and now we're really looking at the second bloom of this bellina. And I can see that toward the end of the flower spike, especially here, you can see there is another bud that's forming, so potentially we may have another bloom out of this orchid this year. I don't have a whole lot of experience with bellina, so for those of you who have bellina for quite some time, I'm curious to know how many blooms can a bellina give you on one single spike a year. I know that for older, more mature, established orchid, they can have multiple spikes. Obviously you will get more flowers that way, but I just wonder how many in a row on a single spike can you get? How many flowers can you get on a single spike a year from bellina? So this is the bloom that the second flower looks like. It's the same as the first flower, and the fragrance, just as I remembered, very sweet, very pleasant, and it's especially fragrant in the morning. Now, what you're seeing here is a side-by-side picture comparison, because I happen to have the other bellina, the wild form bellina, blooming at the same time. So I thought I would put them together so that we can take a closer look to compare what they look, whether there is any similarity, how they look like, and how they look different. And essentially, the one on the left is the wild form bellina. Right, the flower is much skinnier and taller, right? The sepals and petals are skinnier, narrower, and it has a tendency to kind of arch back a little bit. Whereas on the right, the regular bellina, the flower shape is more rounded, it's more round, and it doesn't arch back as the first one. The bellina flower really is just very extended. No, but if you look at it from the side, it's actually pretty flat, whereas the wild form kind of arch back a little bit. Now back to this regular bellina. This came to me as a near blooming size orchid, and I was lucky that it decides that it's mature enough this year to give me bloom. I have not repotted it into a different pot or media. The media, right, what you see here really is how it came to me. Because in the springtime, when I wanted to repot this orchid, I saw the flower spike developing, so I was thinking, should I do it or not? And I decided not to repot this time around. And because it's blooming right now, so I'm not gonna do anything with the root system, with the repot, until I'm guessing next year. I don't really want to mess around with it after it finishes blooming. Some people do it in the fall, right after the summertime, but you know what, I think I'm gonna try to do it in the spring, early spring next year. And for those of you who don't know how the care for these two orchids, the one on the right obviously is traditional media, potted with a hole at the bottom. So what I usually do is I give about 1/4 cup of water, no more than that per time. But for this one, the wild form bellina, it's potted in moss also, but the cup that I'm using, the container I'm using, does not have drainage hole. So what that means is that soaking is the only method, is the only way I can give water to this orchid without having to guess, right? Because if I only spray or put in 1/4 cup, I don't even know if that's enough. So I usually just soak that orchid, the one on the left, and then soak it until I remember, and then I will go drain it out. And I will usually just pour the water out until it wouldn't drip anymore, and that's how I know that, okay, this orchid media is completely saturated but without too much excess water in the cup. And I don't know about you, when I first got into the orchid hobby, I was under the wrong impression, I have to say, the wrong impression here, that species orchids are more difficult to take care of, or they are more finicky, and that's actually not true. With this bellina, for example, it was so easy to take care of these two. I didn't really do anything too special, too out there. They require very little effort. I think Violacea might be a little more difficult, at least in my own experience, compared to these two orchids. The one Violacea that I have is doing okay, but not great, and I don't even see flower, not even a flower spike. I mean, the leaves are still so little. So I personally think Violacea is slightly more difficult, but bellina, it's a very hardy plant, and I think that you should give it a try. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!